It's not often that you find something that is the cheapest, but is also the best. But I think that's what we've got here in this Sony FX30 cage. And in full disclosure, I was trying to decide between buying the small rig cage and the Tilta cage. And while I was doing that, just out of the blue, this company offered to send me out their cheap Sony FX3 FX30 cage. And I thought, well, what the heck, I'll try it out and see if it's any good. And I can just always buy the small rig one later if I want. But I am shocked by how good this thing is. Not only that, but how many extras this has that sort of the Tilta and the small rig don't have coming in their base configuration. And the first thing I noticed with this cage is, unlike other cheap cages I've had in the past, it really locks onto the camera extremely securely. And one problem you can find with cheap cages is they often have a tendency to wiggle on the camera. So this is not only kind of disconcerting when you're actually using the camera, it's also a bit of a problem because it will wear away the paint on the camera. And one of the huge advantages of having a cage on your camera is keeping the camera itself quite in pristine condition and no marks on the paint. Now, this isn't for my own use. I don't care what the camera I'm using looks like, but at some point I know I am going to resell this camera because I do upgrade my cameras every so many years. And if the paint and the camera is pristine, then I've sort of preserved the value of that camera. So I think that is kind of a big deal. So this thing locks in securely. I'm not getting any movement, so I think it's really going to protect the camera well. You're going to get 15 different threaded mounting points around the outside of the camera, as opposed to, I don't know, the 4 or 5 that are on the FX30 originally. In addition to that, you're also going to get 3 RE points. So you're going to get 1 on the top and 2 on the side. That'll give you access to some RE top handles or RE side handles, what have you, or sort of any RE mount compatible accessory. Importantly, the cage itself doesn't block any of the access to any of the doors or ports, which I have had a situation with cheaper cages. I even think the Tilta cage might actually block your view of the tally light, I heard. This doesn't block any of the tally lights. It doesn't block any of the ports. It doesn't block the battery door. Battery door fully opens. This is something that really should be a default thing with cages, but certainly with cheaper cages I've found in the past, that wasn't always the case. The other thing you're gonna get is an additional cold shoe on this cage. So right here built into the cage, you've got an additional cold shoe. Another clever thing that you're gonna get in this cage and this kit at like much less than the other base kits, you're gonna get an Arca Swiss plate on the bottom of the cage itself. This is gonna allow you to use the cage with any Arca Swiss compatible tripod without having to have a tripod plate on the bottom. But in addition to that, this kit comes with another quick release plate, which you can screw onto the bottom. And Suri, who makes this cage, calls it a quick shoe or quick release, additional quick release. They don't say what it's compatible with, but what I found is it's a Manfrotto compatible quick release. So I'm using it on my 2 sort of pro grade Manfrotto tripods, and it works fine. So you've got in the base kit, Arca Swiss plate built into the cage, and you've got this additional Manfrotto plate. And when it comes time to take the camera on or off the cage, or take the quick release plate on or off, or any of the accessories, you've got this built-in magnetic screwdriver that just pops in the bottom here. And it's cool. It's got this little sort of branded sort of logo-y type thing in it. And this, you would think that that might fall off, but it doesn't. As long as you remember to put it back on when you're done, you're always going to have a screwdriver that you need to take the cage on and off. And I find it works really well. In the base kit, you're gonna get this NATO rail at the top. If you're using the top handle that you can get with the FX30 for audio recording, then you won't use this. This cage is compatible with that audio handle, so you can use the audio handle and the cage at the same time. But if you aren't using the audio handle, you can put this NATO rail on the top. That's gonna get you the RE mounting point. It's also gonna get you 3 additional threaded mounting points. You're also gonna get an HDMI clamp, which is such a simple thing, but it's crazy that you're getting it in this base kit. And this is actually a super big deal if you are using HDMI cables, because the HDMI will go in the side, and it's not so much a big deal for me if the HDMI gets knocked out and pulled out of the camera. It doesn't bother me and doesn't happen often. What does happen is over time, if you got an HDMI cable sort of hanging down and putting pressure at an angle on your HDMI port, over time, it will damage that port, and eventually you'll have to get it replaced or repaired. This is gonna stop that from happening, because it just comes out a bit, you loosen this, you sort of get it tight around there, you clamp that in, and it is going to clamp that cable and hold it at that 90-degree right angle going into the side of the camera. That is going to save your HDMI port. That alone could save you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. The other thing that this came with is this little hand strap, which I really didn't think much of. I thought, am I really gonna use that? But what I found, it does nothing for me when I'm using the camera, but when I'm walking with the camera at my side or moving around, it just gives that extra level of security. Sometimes out sort of shooting a bit incognito and I wanna be stealth, and I just keep the camera hanging at my side. It is way more secure when I've got this strap there and it's just not my fingers. Also, if you got sort of sweaty hands and it's a bit sort of sweaty on the grip, or you got a big lens, this just adds a little extra security. And once again, it's just included in the base kit. You're not paying any extra for it. That's the base kit. For an extra 30 bucks, you can get this top handle, which just mounts in the RE mounting point. I really do like this top handle. You're gonna get a whole bunch of additional threads on the top, which of course is cool, but I really like these cold shoe mounting points at the front and the back here where you would put a monitor on. And you put the monitor on and you obviously tighten the monitor like you normally would, but it has this little, I don't know what you would call it, it's like a safety catch. So once you slide it in, you push this down and then you slide it in and it pops back up, and it makes it so if the monitor gets loose with its own tightening point, it won't fall off. It'll rattle around in there and it won't fall off. And I've already had this save me from dropping a monitor once in sort of the only about a week that I've had it. And it's got me wondering, why would you pay more for a camera cage for the FX30? I think this is gonna do all anybody wants, and it is an extremely budget option. Now, I'll put some links in the description down below to both the base kit and the kit with the handle. And although I love the FX30, there's two major flaws that I ever hear people talk about, but I've found a solution for them. And I've just thrown a video on screen now, and this is a cinema lens that fixes the two biggest problems with the Sony FX30.